Raven's Fair looked nothing like the town Lila remembered from the old newspaper clippings. Those yellowed stories from decades ago depicted a quaint, sleepy place, antique shops, quiet streets, a decaying theater at the edge of a cemetery. But the Raven's Fair she stepped into now felt hollow. As if every building was holding its breath. As if every brick remembered something it didn't want to say out loud. The wind was unnaturally cold for late fall, brushing past Lila's coat like unseen fingers tracing down her spine. She pulled her bag closer and glanced at her younger brother Eli walking beside her, earbuds in, staring at everything with a strange curiosity rather than fear. At 17, Eli had always been the odd one, drawn to the eerie, the abandoned, the macabre. He claimed it made him feel seen. Lila never fully understood what that meant. Their move back to their childhood hometown wasn't supposed to feel like a funeral procession, but that's exactly what it felt like. The taxi that had dropped them off had left faster than she expected, almost as if the driver didn't want to linger. Lila didn't blame him, this town had a reputation. One born from blood, missing voices, and the kind of legends people whisper rather than speak. The legend of Mary Shaw. Lila tried not to think about the name, though she had built her career on exposing truths buried under ghost stories. This time, the story was personal. Her parents had fled Raven's Fair when she was only 6, refusing to ever explain why. But lately, cases of gruesome deaths had surfaced again, all following the exact patterns from the old reports, victims found with their tongues ripped out, mouths stretched in silent screams. And every crime scene had the same detail. A doll. Old. Porcelain. Smiling. Lila had seen photos, faces cracked like broken memories, painted eyes that seemed to stare beyond the photograph. Dolls that were identical to the ones Mary Shaw had crafted. Dolls that should have been destroyed. Dolls that shouldn't exist anymore. She inhaled, forcing her journalist instincts to override the dread curling inside her. This place feels smaller than I expected, she said, mostly to break the unsettling silence. Eli pulled out an earbud. Small towns don't change much. That's the creepy part. His voice held a strange excitement. Do you think we'll see one of Shaw's dolls? Don't say her name, Lila whispered sharply, surprising even herself. It came out reflexively, like a childhood fear she never remembered learning. Eli smirked. Why? Afraid the ghost will hear me? She didn't answer. She didn't want to admit that the silence in Raven's Fair wasn't quiet, it was listening. They reached the house their late aunt had left them. The door groaned open, hinges protesting, as if the house didn't want to welcome them. The interior smelled of stale dust and lavender, an unsettling combination that made Lila's throat tighten. Eli wandered in immediately, drawn to every shadow. Lila set her bag down, scanning the living room. Old furniture draped in white sheets appeared like corpses queued for burial. A framed portrait of their aunt rested atop the fireplace, her once kind eyes seeming dimmer, almost frightened. Then Lila saw the shelf. Her stomach dropped. Because sitting on the top row, perfectly centered, was a doll. Porcelain. Cracked. Wearing a faded navy blue dress. Its painted smile stretched a little too wide. Eli, she said slowly, don't touch it. But Eli was already approaching, fascinated. It's just a doll, Lila. No, her voice trembled. It's not. Eli's fingers brushed the doll's cheek. The air changed. A coldness swept through the house, deeper, sharper, intelligent. The lights flickered. The floorboards groaned as if something unseen shifted its weight. Then. A faint breath. Not a human one. A whisper of wind that shouldn't exist indoors. Lila froze. And the doll's head turned. Not fully. Just enough to acknowledge Eli's touch. Just enough to let them know they weren't alone. Eli stepped back, eyes wide. Did you see that? Before Lila could reply, a loud thud echoed from upstairs. Followed by another. Slow. Heavy. Dragging. Eli whispered, "Someone's in the house." Lila swallowed hard, but her body moved before her brain could stop it. She grabbed a flashlight, stepping toward the staircase. "Stay behind me," she whispered. As they ascended, the air pressed down on them, thick and suffocating. Each step creaked like a warning. At the top, the hallway stretched like a dark throat. Then they heard it. A voice. A woman's whisper, soft and cracked like old porcelain. "Shoo, don't scream." Eli grabbed her arm. Because the voice wasn't coming from a room. It was coming from a doll sitting at the end of the hallway. Its mouth slowly opening. Wider. Wider. As if preparing to swallow their silence. The doll at the end of the hallway sat perfectly upright, its tiny porcelain hands resting on its lap as though politely waiting for them to approach. But its mouth, God, its mouth, hung wide open, stretching far beyond what its structure should allow. The jaw seemed unhinged, dark hollow space yawning like a hole cut into the world. Lila couldn't breathe. Eli made a small choking sound behind her. "Lila, it wasn't like that a second ago." She knew. She had seen it close-mouthed when they reached the top of the stairs. She had seen it sitting harmlessly, motionless. But now it looked alive. Lila aimed the flashlight at it, her hands trembling. "Don't move," she whispered. The beam hit the doll's face. Its glass eyes reflected the light in two tiny, perfect circles, bright, wet, animal-like. Something shivered inside those pupils as though something behind them was shifting. Eli took an involuntary step backward, heel hitting the wall. "Lila, do dolls breathe?" "No," she whispered. "They don't." But the darkness inside the doll's mouth pulsed, just once, like a quiet exhale. Her instincts screamed run. But her legs refused. "Maybe someone put it there as a joke," Eli whispered, though even he didn't believe it. The fear in his voice trembled like a plucked string. Lila forced herself to take one step forward. Then another. The air grew colder with each inch, like she was approaching the open mouth of a cave where something hungry waited. She stopped a few feet away, the flashlight trembling wildly in her grip. "Who put you here?" she muttered, though the question wasn't meant for the doll. Then the whisper came again. "Shoo, don't scream." The voice came from directly in front of her. From the doll. Eli gasped. "No. No, that's not real." Lila grabbed him. "We're leaving. Now." They turned to run back down the stairs. But froze. Because standing at the bottom of the staircase, illuminated by the faint glow from a street lamp outside, was a figure. A woman. Tall. Thin. Head tilted to the side in a disturbingly unnatural angle. Her long black dress fluttered lightly, though no breeze touched it. Her face was pale, stretched thin like old paper over bone. And where her mouth should have been was only a torn, black slit. Eli whispered, "Is that Mary Shaw?" Lila slowly backed away, dragging her flashlight up toward the figure. "She's dead," she whispered. "She's been dead for decades." And yet the figure stood there, unmoving, silent, watching. The doll behind them emitted a soft clicking noise, like someone tapping porcelain teeth together. Lila didn't turn around. She couldn't. The woman at the bottom of the stairs began to move. Not walking. Sliding. Her feet didn't lift from the floor. Her body glided forward, jerky and stiff, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. Lila's pulse hammered against her skull. She grabbed Eli's wrist. "Back into the room. Move." They stumbled into the first door on the right, slamming it shut. Lila pressed her back hard against it, breathing fast and unevenly. Eli whispered through tears, "We just saw her. We actually saw her." "No," Lila said automatically. "We saw something else. Something pretending." A heavy thump hit the door. Eli screamed. The old wood shook violently as though something enormous had slammed its full weight against it. Lila lunged forward and held the handle down as if her own life depended on it. Another hit, harder. Then scratching. Long, deep, dragging scratches along the wood. Mary Shaw's voice seeped through the cracks like smoke. "Open your mouth." Lila shook her head violently. "God, no, no, no." Eli curled into himself in the corner, rocking back and forth, eyes wide and wet. "She followed us. She knows we're here. She knows our names." "No, she doesn't," Lila whispered shakily. "She can't. She's dead." A soft laugh drifted through the keyhole. A laugh that sounded like 100 tiny voices layered together. A laugh that didn't come from a throat. It came from dolls. Eli's voice cracked. "Lila, look." She turned. There, in the far corner of the room, sat 3 more dolls. Porcelain. Cracked. All staring straight at them. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, they began to rise to their tiny little feet. One step. Another. Their heads twitching, jaws unhinging. The door behind Lila struck again, hard. Trapped between the living dolls and the pounding ghost outside, Lila realized the truth. Raven's Fair had never been silent. It had been waiting. The pounding on the door stopped. Silence spilled into the room, a thick, suffocating silence that felt heavy enough to crush bone. Lila kept her back pressed against the door, heart slamming so violently she thought Mary Shaw could hear it. Eli hadn't moved from the corner. His eyes were locked on the 3 dolls that had taken their first steps toward them. They were frozen now, but not lifeless. Their tiny glass eyes gleamed, reflecting a hunger far too human. Lila raised the flashlight with trembling hands. The beam slid across the room. 3 porcelain faces stared back. Their mouths were open. Too open. The cracks around their painted lips had widened, stretching like torn flesh. One doll's jaw hung crookedly, revealing a dark hollow interior, a void with no tongue, no teeth. Just emptiness. Eli swallowed hard. Why are they staring like that? Lila didn't know. But the silence in the room felt wrong. It felt aware. "You need to get up," she whispered. "We have to get out of here." Eli shook his head. "She's right outside. We can't run. We can't scream. One of the dolls twitched. A sharp, convulsive jerk that snapped its neck to the side with a crack. Eli whimpered. Another doll moved, its tiny dress rustling. A high, crackling sound came from it, like faint whispering layered beneath static. Lila stepped closer to her brother, shielding him. "Don't listen," she said softly. "Whatever they're whispering, ignore it." But the dolls grew louder. A soft chorus of voices, overlapping and broken. "Don't scream. Don't scream. Don't." The dolls were mimicking Mary Shaw's voice. No. Not mimicking. Channeling. The whispers crawled into the room like cold fingers slipping under the skin. Eli covered his ears. "Make it stop. Make them stop, Lila. They can't hurt us unless we scream," Lila said, repeating the old legend that had resurfaced in every article she'd studied. "But what if that's not true anymore?" Eli whispered. A horrifying thought. The legend said Mary Shaw ripped out the tongues of those who screamed in her presence. But what if she had changed in death? What if she didn't need the scream anymore? The doll in the center suddenly dropped to its hands and feet, its porcelain fingers clicking sharply against the wooden floor, and began crawling toward them with unnatural speed. Lila screamed before she could stop herself. The doll froze mid-crawl. Eli's breath caught. Lila slapped a hand over her mouth, heart exploding with terror. The room went dead silent. Then, from outside the door, tap, tap, tap. Something long, sharp, and deliberate traced along the wood. Mary Shaw had heard. She knew they were inside. Eli grabbed Lila's arm. "Lila, you screamed." "I didn't mean to," she whispered frantically. I couldn't." The doorknob slowly began to turn. Metal squeaking softly. Lila shoved her weight harder against the door. "Eli," she whispered urgently, "window. Now." He snapped out of his paralysis and stumbled toward the window, hands shaking as he tried to unfasten the latch. The cold outside air seeped in as he forced it open. Behind Lila, the scratches on the door grew deeper. Something pressed hard from the other side, pressing, testing, searching for weakness. Mary Shaw whispered. "I heard you." Lila's vision blurred with panic. "Go, Eli. Move." He climbed onto the window frame. "You first." "No. Go. I'll follow right after." The doorknob rattled violently, twisting, pulling, as if dozens of invisible hands were trying to turn it all at once. The dolls on the floor began crawling again, toward Lila. Their tiny porcelain fingers clicked. Faster. Faster. A horrifying rhythm that filled the room. Click. Click. Click click click. Eli disappeared out the window. Lila backed away, the crawling dolls closing in. One reached her shoe, cold porcelain fingers wrapping around the leather. She kicked it away, its tiny body shattering against the wall. Pieces of porcelain scattered across the floor like broken teeth. The doorknob stopped moving. For one sickening moment, everything went silent again. Then, the voice came from right behind the door. "You will never leave Raven's Fair." The door exploded inward. Not opened. Shattered. Splinters of wood flew past Lila as something tall and impossibly thin lunged into the room, its hands stretched out like claws, face twisting into a wide, unnatural grin. Mary Shaw. Her skin looked like porcelain stretched over rotting muscle. Her eyes were white, empty, puppeteer's eyes. Her mouth split wider as she hissed. "Scream for me." Lila dove through the window. Mary Shaw's hand swiped past her, razor-sharp nails slicing through the air where Lila's face had been a second earlier. She hit the ground outside hard, scraping her hands and knees. Eli grabbed her immediately. They ran. Behind them, from the shattered window, a whisper floated out into the night. "It's never really over." Rain began to fall, soft at first, then hard, cold sheets that made the streets of Raven's Fair glisten like a freshly washed corpse. Lila and Eli ran without direction, boots splashing through puddles, breath sharp and uneven in the freezing air. Neither dared look back. They didn't need to. The whispers followed them. Faint. Dragging. Layered with the hollow echo of cracks forming in porcelain. When they finally reached a streetlight that hadn't flickered out, Lila forced them to stop. She grabbed Eli's shoulders, her own breath shaking violently. "Are you hurt?" she managed. Eli stared at her, not with fear, but something worse. Something hollow. "I heard her in my head," he whispered. "When you screamed, she was inside my mind." Lila swallowed. Rain plastered her hair to her face. "She can't hurt us if we stay quiet. We know the rule." Eli slowly shook his head. "No, Lila. That's the old rule." His voice trembled. "The dolls don't wait for the scream anymore. They move before it. They react before it. Something's changed." The curse is different. Lila's stomach twisted. Changed how? Eli opened his mouth to answer. But a shadow moved behind him. Lila's blood froze. She grabbed Eli and pulled him aside just as a figure staggered into the light. A man. Soaking wet. Clothes torn. Chest rising in desperate, uneven breaths. He stumbled toward them, hands shaking violently like he was freezing. "Help," he croaked. Lila stepped closer. "Sir, are you hurt? What happened?" The man lifted his face. And Lila screamed before she could stop herself. His tongue was gone. Not cut. Ripped out. The inside of his mouth was destroyed, ragged tissue dangling like strings ripped from a puppet. Blood dripped down his chin, mixing with the rain, painting long red streaks across his throat. Eli almost collapsed. "Oh my God." The man tried to speak again, but only a wet gurgle came out. He staggered closer, reaching for them, not aggressively, but pleadingly. Lila backed away. "Who did this to you?" He lifted a trembling hand and pointed behind them. Slowly. Shakily. His entire arm rattling like bone against bone. Lila didn't want to turn. But she had to. She looked. At first she saw nothing but darkness between the houses. Then. Something shifted. A silhouette stepped into the faint glow of another street lamp. A woman's silhouette. Tall. Rigid. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Mary Shaw. Her dress fluttered like it was caught in a breeze no one else felt. Eli whispered, "Lila, don't make a sound. Don't move." Mary Shaw didn't walk. She glided. Her feet dragging lightly against the pavement. Her neck twitched once, snapping from one angle to another like a puppet string had been pulled too sharply. Lila grabbed Eli's hand. "Run." They bolted down a narrow alley, the tongueless man struggling after them, but too weak to keep up. Lila's heart pounded as thunder cracked above them. The alley ended in a chain-link fence. Eli panicked. "We're trapped." "No, we're not." Lila climbed, gripping the cold, wet metal with numb hands. Eli followed. When she reached the top, she turned to help him over. And froze. Mary Shaw stood at the mouth of the alley. Unmoving. Watching. Her eyes reflected the lightning, two empty, horrifyingly white circles. Her mouth began to open. Slowly. Like a porcelain crack splitting wider and wider. "Don't scream," she whispered, but her lips did not move. The voice seemed to pour from the darkness itself. Eli reached the top of the fence. "Jump, Lila." Lila hesitated. Mary Shaw's hand began to rise, fingers cracking as they stretched outward, longer than a human hand should be. Lila jumped. She hit the ground hard, ankle twisting painfully. Eli landed beside her and helped her stand. They hobbled away, deeper into the maze of backyards and empty yards of Raven's fair houses. Behind them, the night echoed with the soft, chilling sound of something tapping the fence. Tap. 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 Like long porcelain fingers testing the metal. Lila's breath trembled. She's not just haunting the house. She's haunting the entire town. Eli nodded slowly. "Lila, she's using the dolls to spread herself. She's in them. All of them." They reached an old gazebo near the edge of a dried-up fountain. Lila leaned against the wooden structure, ankle throbbing. Eli glanced around. "We need shelter," he said. "Anywhere that isn't open." "We need answers," Lila whispered. "We need to know how to stop her." Eli suddenly looked over her shoulder. His face drained of all color. "Lila, behind you." She turned slowly. In the gazebo's corners. Nested in the shadows. sat dolls. Dozens. Tiny faces staring through the darkness. Cracked smiles. Empty eyes. Every one of them whispering the same phrase in soft, fractured voices. It's never really over. The dolls stared from every corner of the gazebo, unblinking, patient, their cracked porcelain faces gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Lila grabbed Eli's arm and pulled him back, but the dolls didn't move toward them. Not yet. They simply watched. Eli swallowed hard. Why aren't they attacking? Maybe they're waiting, Lila whispered. Maybe she's close. A low, soft humming drifted in the distance, slow, melodic, like a lullaby sung in reverse. Lila felt her stomach twist. That's her, Eli whispered. She's calling them. Calling us. Lila stepped back from the gazebo, pulling Eli with her. The dolls did not follow. Their tiny heads tilted ever so slightly, synchronized, like a choir acknowledging its conductor. The humming grew louder. Closer. Lila grabbed Eli's hand. We need to move before. She stopped. A light flickered in a building across the street, an old brick structure with boarded windows and faded signage barely readable under the rain. Raven's Fair Historical Archives. A place where town records slept. A place where secrets were buried. Lila's pulse quickened. There. That's where we'll find answers. Eli hesitated. Lila, we barely survived the house. We barely survived her. She turned to him, voice firm despite her fear. If we don't understand the curse, we're dead. If she doesn't kill us, the dolls will. Reluctantly, he nodded. Together, they ran through the rain-slicked streets toward the old archives. The door creaked open with a reluctant groan. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and the faint smell of moldy paper. Rows of shelves stretched into the darkness like ribs of some long-dead beast. Their footsteps echoed. Too loudly. Lila lifted her flashlight and scanned the nearest shelves. Old newspapers. Town registries. Death records. The rain battered the roof, thunder rumbling overhead like distant footsteps. Eli moved toward an old oak desk, riffling through drawers with trembling hands. We need anything about Mary Shaw. Anything about her life, her death, the curse. Lila scanned the files until she found a drawer labeled Shaw, 1930 to 1940. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it open. Inside were brittle documents and a black leather-bound book. Its cover was cracked, corners torn, but the gold lettering remained. The Ledger of the Dead. The name sent a cold shiver through her spine. She opened it. Inside, written in elegant handwriting, were names. Hundreds of them. Some she recognized from old murder reports. Others from the town's gravestones. Eli stepped closer. What is that? Lila's voice trembled. Victims. Page after page. Each name followed by a single chilling note. Silenced. Eli clutched his stomach. God. Lila flipped to the last page. 2 new spaces had been added. Fresh ink. Lila Harper. Eli Harper. And beneath their names, faded but visible. Soon. Eli stumbled back. She knew we were coming. She knows everything. Lila shut the ledger with shaking hands. We need to learn how she died. There must be something the town hid. Eli nodded and reached for an old newspaper bound with twine. When he opened it, the headline leapt from the page. Local puppeteer Mary Shaw lynched by Raven's Fair men. Body dismembered. Tongue removed. Lila leaned closer. A smaller article below the headline read. Town burns Shaw's theater. Dolls believed destroyed. Eli's eyes widened. They didn't destroy the dolls. They lied. Lila kept reading, voice barely a whisper. It says, her spirit could survive in fragments. Attached to her work, her dolls. Lightning flashed outside, bright enough to illuminate the room for a split second. And in that flash, Lila saw it. Silhouettes. Dozens of dolls lining the shelves above them. She screamed and dropped the flashlight. Eli spun around, eyes wide. The dolls hadn't been there before. They sat shoulder to shoulder on every shelf, every table, every corner, silently watching. None had been there. Moments ago. Lila grabbed Eli's hand. Don't move. Don't breathe. The dolls' heads began to tilt, all at once. A synchronized motion that sent a cold ripple through her bones. Then they all whispered together, voices layered, broken, and hollow. She's coming. The archive's door slammed shut. Books flew from shelves as a violent wind blasted through the building, though no window was open. Papers swirled like a storm of dying birds. Eli shouted over the noise, Lila, look. In the center of the room. Shadows twisted. Stretching. Forming. A tall figure materialized, dress torn, head hanging sideways. Mary Shaw. Her voice was a chorus of every doll in the room. I never stay dead, for long. Her pale face rose slowly, eyes white, mouth split into a monstrous, crooked grin. She stepped forward. The dolls leapt off the shelves. Every one of them. Lila grabbed Eli, pulling him behind a fallen bookshelf as the dolls skittered toward them on hands and feet, clicking, twitching, hissing. Eli screamed. Mary Shaw whispered behind the sound. Scream again, and I'll take your tongues myself. The world became a hurricane of shadows and whispers as the dolls swarmed the archives. Lila dragged Eli behind the toppled bookshelf, her heartbeat pounding so violently she feared Mary Shaw could hear it. The dolls moved like insects, tiny porcelain faces cracking with every jerk of their limbs, little hands tapping the wooden floor in a staccato frenzy. Tap. Tap. Tap tap tap. Mary Shaw stood tall in the middle of the room. Her hollow eyes scanned the fallen shelves like she was searching for prey. She didn't need to see, she felt them. Eli clamped a hand over his mouth as a doll scurried dangerously close, its head twitching from side to side, searching. Lila held her breath. One wrong sound. One slip. And their names would be crossed off the ledger for good. Another crash echoed, Mary Shaw's hand striking a metal filing cabinet. The impact rattled the room. Come out, my children, she whispered. Let me finish what they started. The dolls froze. Heads turned. Jaws opened. Eyes widened. Eli's hand shook against his lips. His breathing was ragged, almost sob-like. And then. A doll turned toward their hiding spot. Its porcelain face slowly split into a grotesque smile. Lila didn't think. She pulled Eli to his feet. Run. They bolted between shelves, books flying off as dolls leapt after them. Mary Shaw's voice sliced through the storm of noise. Silence them. A doll clamped onto Lila's ankle, its tiny fingers like cold metal. She stumbled, kicking wildly, smashing it against a desk until its head cracked open. Inside was darkness, thick and oily, like the doll had no stuffing, no mechanism. Just void. Eli reached a back hallway and pulled her through. They slammed the door shut, pushing a filing cabinet in front of it. The dolls banged on the other side immediately. Lila gasped for breath, clutching her side. The hallway was narrow, lined with old portraits, town founders, mayors, past residents. All watching. All too lifelike in the flickering. Emergency lights. Eli stepped closer to one portrait, an old man with sunken eyes. Do you see that? He whispered. Lila approached. A faint carving was etched into the frame. silenced by Shaw. A cold surge of dread shot through her. She scanned the other portraits. Nearly every one bore the same words. Mary Shaw didn't just kill. She collected. And now her collection was growing again. A loud crack sounded behind them, the filing cabinet shifting. "She's breaking through," Eli whispered. "We need to keep moving." They hurried down the hallway, turning into a storage room filled with old theater props, dusty curtains, mannequins, broken stage lights. Eli froze. "Lila." She turned. All the mannequins' heads were slowly turning toward them. Dozens of blank white faces, necks twisting with faint creaks. Then. Crack. A mannequin's face shattered. Porcelain spilled out from inside. Not foam. Not plastic. Porcelain. Every mannequin in the room contained a doll. And they were waking up. "Go, go, go!" Lila screamed. They dashed out the back exit just as the mannequins collapsed to the ground and tiny porcelain fingers began clawing their way out of the torsos. Outside, cold night air slapped their faces. They ran through the alley, breath fogging, feet slamming the pavement. Then they stopped. The alley opened to Ravens Fair's abandoned theater, a massive, charred building with its sign still hanging crooked. The place Mary Shaw once performed. The origin of the curse. Eli whispered, "Lila, this is where they killed her." Lightning flashed. Lila's stomach twisted. Mary Shaw stood on the theater stage inside, visible through the shattered entrance, her silhouette framed by the burnt remains of velvet curtains. Waiting. Welcoming. Her voice drifted through the air, soft and cold. "Come. Let the final act begin." Lila grabbed Eli's hand. "We can't run anymore. If this is where it started, then this is where it ends." Eli nodded hesitantly, though fear trembled through him. As they stepped toward the ruined theater entrance, something moved beside them. They both turned. A figure stood near the wall. The tongueless man from earlier. He pointed toward the stage, eyes wide with warning, then slowly turned his head. Behind him stood a large wooden puppet, its carved mouth hanging open. It raised its wooden hand. And its voice, hollow, childlike, echoed. "It's never really over." Before Lila could scream, the puppet's jaw snapped shut around the man's throat. A sickening choke. A crack. A gurgle. He fell. Dead. The puppet turned its empty eyes to Lila and Eli. Mary Shaw's whisper floated on the wind. "The curtain rises." Ravens Fair felt completely hollow as Lila ran through the fog-soaked streets with Eli slumped against her shoulder. His breathing was weak, shallow, as if something inside him had been scooped out and replaced with cold air. Every window around them rattled, every door creaked open on its own, and every shadow seemed to carry a grin she couldn't see but could feel. Mary Shaw was close. Too close. Lila dragged Eli into the old theater, Mary Shaw's final stage, and slammed the warped doors shut behind them. The chandeliers flickered above, illuminating the dusty velvet seats and the splintered floorboards. The place looked dead, abandoned, forgotten, but it breathed. The entire theater inhaled the moment she stepped inside, as though welcoming her to her own funeral. Eli stirred, eyelids twitching. "Lila, she's calling me." "No," she said, voice breaking. "She's using you. She wants to finish what she started." Eli's expression twitched into a smile that definitely wasn't his. "She just wants her voice back." A cold wind rushed down the aisles, making every seat creak in unison like an audience leaning forward. Lila forced herself to keep moving. She needed to reach the stage. If the legends were right, if the journals she found in Mary Shaw's old workshop were true, there was only one way to sever the curse. Burn the original doll. Billy. And Billy waited beneath the stage. Lila helped Eli to the curtains. They parted by themselves, sliding open with a dry hiss. The entire stage was bathed in a pale blue glow, though no light source existed. Dust spun in slow spirals, moving against gravity, as if circling a presence she could not see. A whisper drifted from above. "Don't scream." Lila shuddered violently. Eli's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the stage floor. A figure descended from the ceiling, not falling, but gliding, suspended by strings made of shadow. Mary Shaw's face was porcelain white and cracked, stretched into a smile carved far too wide. Her lips didn't move, but her voice echoed like 100 whispers speaking in perfect unison. "You brought him home to me." Lila planted herself between Eli and the apparition. "Let my brother go." "Your brother was chosen long before you arrived," Mary cooed. "He listens. He obeys. He knows silence is the only truth." Lila clenched her fists. "You're afraid. That's why you hide behind dolls. That's why you need him." Mary's smile sharpened. Dust swarmed around her, knitting into the shapes of dolls, dozens, then hundreds, each with empty eyes and painted-on smirks. Their heads jerked toward Lila in the same instant. A chorus of wooden tapping filled the room. Step. 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 Their feet approached, synchronized, mechanical. Lila dragged Eli into the trapdoor and pulled it open. The hinges groaned like something waking up. She used all her strength to get him down the ladder before slamming the hatch shut just as the dolls reached the edge of the stage. Below, darkness swallowed them whole. The air smelled like rotting wood and old fabric. She fumbled for the lantern she'd left earlier, flicking it on. The basement glowed faint amber. Shelves lined the walls, filled with doll molds, plaster heads, unfinished limbs, and stitched mouths. And at the far end, Billy. Sitting on a stool. Waiting. Lila approached cautiously. Eli, still unconscious, murmured softly, like someone whispering in his dreams. She lifted the doll. It was lighter than she expected, too light. Billy's eyes snapped open. Lila nearly dropped him but held tight. The doll stared at her with a glassy intensity that made her skin crawl. "Burn the doll, break the curse," she whispered shakily. "Right? That's what you wrote, Mary. That's the rule." A slow tap echoed behind her. Lila turned. Mary Shaw stood in the basement now. No strings. No puppets. Just her. Her smile stretched ear to ear. "You misunderstand, dear. The doll isn't the curse." Lila froze. "Your family is." Eli's body jerked upright with unnatural violence, head snapping toward Lila, mouth stretched open into a silent scream. Shadows poured from his throat like smoke. Mary spread her arms. The last Shaw must serve. Realization hit Lila like a knife, their bloodline. Their mother. Their grandmother. Descendants. Mary hadn't been tormenting random families. She'd been reclaiming her own. Lila stumbled back, clutching Billy. "No, no, Eli, fight it." Eli's eyes turned pitch black. Mary stepped closer. "It's never really over." The lantern flickered. The doll's whispering rose above them like a storm. And Lila finally understood. Silence wasn't an absence of sound. It was a fate. And it had come for them both.